Ho, 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 ho. God rest ye merry, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to QI. Dust off the snow, take off your hats, scarves and trousers, and join me as we gather round the flickering flames of fact and fallacy to examine the subjects of fire and freezing. And helping me to stoke the embers and rummage excitedly in my stockings tonight, we have four festive fellows. It's a baptism of fire for Dom Jolly. And crackling and sparking on all cylinders, Clive Anderson. Come home to a real fire. Buy a cottage in Wales in the company of Rob Brydon. And hiding under the bedclothes, playing with matches, Alan Davies. Let it snow, and let us know what you know. But before the party games begin, gentlemen, I have to ask you to jingle your bells. Dom goes...
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Nice. Clive goes...
Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire.
Rob goes...
I am the god of hellfire! You fire!
There's a fiery theme, isn't there? And Alan goes...
Alan, you're a bloody disgrace. You're fired.
You're fired! Oh, no! How disappointing. Now, here's one way to use fire. Indian smoke signals. Can you tell me what they're saying here?
But they did actually, it's not going to turn out to be some myth that they never did smoke signals.
No, indeed, you might have
I
expected it, but in fact it's quite genuine. It's considered probably the first language of North America was smoke signals.
So what makes that different? I don't see the subtleties of it from just a bit of smoke.
All you need to have is a bit of smoke and then not smoke. Do you see what I mean? If you left it alone, you'd get a column of smoke. But what they do is do puffs of smoke by having animal skins, not blankets, oddly enough. I know one used to think it was blankets, I think. Yeah. But animal skins that you take away. And they can create immensely complicated, even V-shapes and things like that, using the blankets.
Is this the same thing they do at the Vatican with the Pope? Or is it just
not?
Is that a more simple language?
Very simple, that isn't it?
It's just white smoke.
It's either white or black.
Right. Yes.
They used to add wet straw to make it black if they couldn't find a.
Black is what for an African Pope?
It's for not being able to. They have to tell the populace assembled in St. Peter's Square whether or not they've come to a decision.
But since they banned smoking in the Vatican, quite a lot of people hang out the window for a fag, and it causes all sorts of trouble.
Imagine Catholic priests hanging out for a fag. It seems so unlikely. If we run the film on, in fact, it's 2 puffs that they give here.
That's how.
How. And 2 puffs means all's well, apparently.
Yes.
It means everything's okay.
Looks more like a question mark there, doesn't it?
Oh, it does actually. Right.
Do they do grammar, or...?
They should have got one of those light aircraft that can write in the sky. Just simple purchase.
What? Free drink?
A word like that. You see that? They're ahead of you.
They got good, didn't they?
They did.
See, with the one before, I don't know if we can go back to it, but the one before, yes, we can. With that one there, which you say means all's well. But of course, I mean, that could so easily be the aftermath of this Indian's home going up in flames. And they'd look over the hill and they go, do you think that's our place? No, it says all's well. It's fine. They just carry on their way.
You're right, it is confusing.
But we used to do this with these signal bonfires, didn't we? They went across the country.
Absolutely right.
But again, the same beacons, it's the same problem there. It might be, oh, look, there's an invasion, or it could just be the Great Fire of London's happening and bring water.
Oh, yeah, if you accidentally set that to your beacon, that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Was that before or after email?
It's close.
Yeah.
They were spamming, though. You'd get endless streams. Do you want a bigger cock?
What about...
Is that how you get a bigger cock? Slapping it around like that? I think with me it would have the opposite effect, to be honest. I think it might into my shell.
I think you find it works for a while.
Oh, heavens, yes. Well, anyway, Indian smoke signals varied from time to time and place to place. But one puff generally meant just hello. Now we can all take our hats off as I ask another question. So, we've provided you with a more sophisticated signalling device, which you've got in front of you, in fact, and we've given you a little booklet about each. Dom, why don't you try flirting with Rob based on this? Because what they've got in front of them, ladies and gentlemen, is they have a little booklet. They have a little booklet describing the language of fans. What are you saying, Dom?
I'll tell you what he's saying. Yeah. He is saying, I am having a fit, the tablets are in my top pocket. No, he's saying, okay, oh my God.
I love another.
Yes, I love another.
Oh my.
It's not very nice.
And he's looking at Adam.
No.
Right, okay.
Not that chap next to you.
As you see, it's a very complex...
Do not betray our secret.
Steve, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah. Slow closing. Shut... Oh, I promised to marry you. Thank you. But do you know anything about the language of fans, where it came from, what time there was such a thing as a language of fans?
I'm guessing it was from Belgium.
From Belgium?
Yeah.
Well, you're not far off, actually.
I'd say it's from Yorkshire.
Can you imagine that?
And what if you're just a bit hot and you go flying and you suddenly realise you're saying, hello, I love you, come over here. Just a bit hot in here.
Exactly. Do you swallow? Whatever. Sorry. What's the matter with these today?
What's got into you tonight,
Christmas.
Stephen?
It's Christmas.
Yes.
I've got the Christmas spirit is in me. I'm very sorry. And
who's that come from?
Usually you're the ones who dragged it, and I just thought if it nosedives into the carnal, it's going to be my fault tonight. No, actually, the thing about the language of fans is that fans, you're quite right, did come over from China to Europe via Italy, as so much did after Marco Polo. But, in fact, it was quite a late 19th century invention. There was a French fan house, a maker of fans called Du Valois. And they produced a little booklet with this language of fans in order to try and make it sort of a...
French fan house? Is that a euphemism for something?
Maison de l'Éventail. I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
It took over from the language of the baguette, which was in use before.
Rather more basic language, exactly. Yeah, so there we are, fans. Obviously, every lady had a fan in those days, in the 18th and 19th centuries. But in order, I think, to help the sales of their fans, they invented this language, basically, the language of the fan. Now, what happened to the fireman's pole?
He tiled the fireman's bathroom.
Very good. Very good.
I mean, how much time does it save to go down a pole? I mean, they've got to drive half the mile across the town anyway to get there. So
that's
half
true.
a second off the... Just walk down the stairs.
Why don't they have a slide, like in the park?
Oh, that would be fun.
They could have a swirly slide or even a water slide.
It'd be a good way of getting young firemen in, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Getting them trained. It was probably a health and safety thing, I would imagine.
Oh, God.
Is it really?
No, you see...
Safety gone mad. That's the new political correctness gone mad.
Yeah, there was a series of stories in the newspapers that, like, essentially just to make things up, in order to get us all angry in the morning, they claimed that, firemen's poles were being taken out because health and safety... And it's just...
It's the whole reason.
I mean, most new fire stations are built on one floor, so they don't arise. Yeah. But in all ones where they exist, they're there, and if they build one with 2 floors, they get their poles.
But surely that's the main reason you become a fireman, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go down the pole. It's not like I want to be a fireman so that I might die in a fire.
Yes.
It's I want to go down the pole, and maybe one night I'll bring a special friend back and show her the pole, and...
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You demand an extra floor on the fire station. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So
do you know where the longest pole is in Europe, fireman's pole? And how long would you think it might be? What's the maximum length?
48 feet, I would guess.
That's
64
no,
feet.
It's 40 foot, actually. There's a 40-footer in Birmingham, and it's the biggest in Europe.
That's the limit, is it?
There may be a bigger one in America,
terrifying.
I believe.
That's really quite high.
It is quite high, 40 foot, yeah.
And you're really going to take the skin off your hands by the time you get off.
So you picture that squeaky noise, and it makes your teeth go on edge, doesn't
They
it?
talc up like the weightlifters.
They should do, shouldn't they?
Do they teach a technique of coming down the pole? Is it just hands? Because they all seem to be
gripping
doing...
I think the thighs have
do a
to
knee
exert
grip.
pressure.
I must say, there are a hell of a lot of firefighters.
The driver of the fire engine is there going, no, I can't go yet, I've got to wait for all here. Meanwhile, a whole family is burning to death.
Well, apparently it's because they sometimes literally are still pulling on their trousers and then running downstairs doing that, of course, is much more dangerous than going down a pole where you can just sort of hold them up and go down the pole and put them on. You really are, and obviously every second can save a life.
I don't understand why the firemen are always completely caught out by the fact that...
Yeah, so what? A fire?
Oh, my God! Quick! All undressed.
Were the poles always made of shiny metal, or were there early versions that splintered and...
Oh, nasty.
Well, they must have experimented with
flammable
materials.
pole, that'd be absurd. They'll all be stuck up there with the pole on fire, no one to put it out.
It was insurance companies invented firemen.
You're absolutely right. I think you should get some points to that, Clive, because you're completely correct. Things like the Sun was one of the biggest, now the Royal Sun Alliance. That started as a fire insurance company. And what would happen was you'd pay the insurance to the company and they would send you a brass plaque which you would set into the wall of your house. So if there was a fire, what tended to happen was lots of different brigades came from different insurance companies and they read the plaque. And if you hadn't paid, they wouldn't put your fire out unless you happened to be next to someone else who had. Because, you know, if you got a fire, the chances are the fire would spread to them.
I think that's one of the worst things I can imagine is your house is on fire and they turn up and won't put it out.
I know. Can you imagine that?
That would make me annoyed.
Would they stay and kind of roast marshmallows, or would they just drive straight off?
They'd stand there with the hose going,
Or sort of saying...
Well, they just stand there with water pouring out the other
Sort of
way.
saying, since we're here, if you paid for the next time, we might as well collect now.
Think again with your premiums.
It's not the fire that kills people. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Fire doesn't kill people?
No. Well, what it does, Clive, of course. You're not going to tie me up in legalese here. I'm not going to get all heated up, which is what you want to happen. I'm not going to stay very calm.
Yes. He didn't say fire doesn't kill people. He said it's not the fire that kills people.
Your Lordship is absolutely right. But I was just exploring a little bit the notion that fire was in some way not deadly.
It's not the fire that kills the people.
Generally
it's a
speaking.
byproduct of the fire. And I wonder if any of you know what that byproduct
Might it be the smoke?
Is it flame?
Is it the slinky?
is. It's not the slinky, Stephen, but it's a
wild
good try.
guess.
Yeah.
Clive, you were right. Smoke. It's the smoke. And what happens is... Smoke doesn't burn you, so I know what you're thinking. Well, how on earth could... No. What smoke does, and this is where it gets interesting, it chokes you. And if we choke, what can't we do?
We
We can't breathe. We can't breathe. And if we can't breathe, what do, Dom?
We die.
We die. Yeah.
There's a thing called a flashpoint in which... Now, I don't know where I learnt this. Well, it might have been in a film, or it might have been from a really terrifying fire safety talk that we were given at primary school. Which was the one thing I really remember about that is when you strike a match, strike it away from you.
Yes.
Because otherwise the head will come off and set light to you, particularly if you're a granny.
Whoa!
And this guy told us this story about someone's grandma who'd burned to death.
Because urine is flammable if it stays on clothing. No, this is true. This is true. There's something in urine, if it stays on your clothes long enough, becomes flammable. So grandmothers who are not well maintained, it's true.
Particularly vulnerable to a flying
Particularly
head of a
vulnerable to an arsonist who's looking for...
That's a measure of how mean people are. They won't even pee on you if you're
That's an
on
Australian
fire.
phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
I wouldn't piss up
an
his
area.
arse if his kidneys were on fire.
Exactly. So,
Well, wonderful. Thank you for all that information about fire and smoke and goodness knows what else. Now, what's the worst thing you can do if you're a fire eater?
well, there are vegetarian restaurants, aren't there, where you can't get meat.
Yeah.
So if
All
you're a fire
vegetarian
eater...
restaurants, I think.
Yes.
Qualify.
Yes. Nothing wrong with that sentence so far.
There are vegetarian restaurants where you can't get meat.
Yeah.
To quote the great John Cleese, thank you for... What's your specialist subject? The bleeding obvious.
I was
You've heard about these, apparently these vegetarian restaurants...
I was establishing what I thought was an uncontroversial point, that in vegetarian restaurants you can't eat meat because they don't serve it.
No, they don't. I believe that's right.
So, there may be restaurants that don't serve fire. So, if you're a fire eater, there'd be no point in going to these restaurants and ordering fire. This is a simple point I was trying to make, but I was interrupted rather on the way.
I'll have a nice plate of fire, please.
Yes.
And that wouldn't
I would have
work.
thought at a Christmas event, if a fire eater was thinking, I haven't shown my family this skill, and there was a urine-soaked granny who'd been brought out of the home just for a day for Christmas, that would probably not be the time to say, so what are you up to now? Bruno.
Well, basically, I mean, I don't know if you know much about fire eating. There isn't really much to know. What you see is what they do. It really is as bad as it looks. I mean, they mostly have mouths filled with blisters and ulcers. It's a very unpleasant thing to do.
Do you eat the fire?
They hurt themselves. Basically, what you shouldn't do is breathe in. They have this condition, it's fire eater's lung, which is obviously, as you can imagine, an absolutely horrific condition. And
It's like
plus
farmer's lung, and there's no subsidy.
Exactly.
Because basically it's fire spitting rather than fire
Yeah,
eating.
and that's, no matter how careful they are, they ingest the lighter fluid, which is toxic.
Or if you had plastic false teeth, or wooden false teeth, which I think we've discussed in this programme.
Yes, we
that
have.
would be a disaster, because they would catch fire.
They would catch fire, that would be awful. Yeah, and the
smoking.
smoke would then...
Smoke,
Yeah.
which would
Smoke.
would kill you.
It wouldn't be the fire, you see.
Well, anyway, perhaps the most important piece of advice to the fire eater is do not inhale. Now, it's time to retire from the fire and brave the cold. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a mile-long aircraft carrier made from ice and sawdust?
Radar. I put it to you that... Move on.
No, you've got a good point there. That's a brilliant
Well, I
point.
was wondering, I was wondering if they're undetectable by radar.
That must be.
It's a nice thought. I don't think that's true. At the size they were planned, and this was a genuine plan in Britain by a man called Pike, after whom the substance is named. It's a mix, I know.
Yeah.
Don't tell him your name, Pike. I know. His name is Pike with a Y. And the substance is known as picrete. It's stronger than steel. I'm not kidding you. It's just
Till
ice.
the temperature goes up.
Well, no, but that's the other thing, is it doesn't melt. They tested it for a whole summer in a lake and it didn't melt. Mountbatten was obsessed by the idea and he took a lump of it in to see Churchill, and the story goes Churchill was in his bath. Churchill often took meetings while in his bath, and he threw it into his bath and said, "There, Winston." And Churchill watched in his hot bath, and it didn't melt, this piece of ice. It did not melt. It stayed
But because it
frozen.
landed on his nuts,
Well,
he said, I'm not going ahead with that.
Well, the idea was to build aircraft carriers, literally with guns on them. That was the plan. I mean, it seems absolutely barking, I agree. But it was only the Normandy landings that stopped us building such things.
The picture, of course,
Yeah.
looks like the cover of a magazine where they might say, if you like ice and you like aircraft carriers, you'll love Iced Aircraft Carrier Monthly. It builds up into a wonderful collection.
Can I say, I do like ice and I like aircraft carriers, and I do get that magazine, and that's not an aircraft carrier, that's a destroyer.
You're right, that is a destroyer. Thank you.
yes, of course.
Very good.
Yes.
Absolutely right, actually. That's no kind of aircraft carrier,
There's
is
no
it?
magazine for those people.
And I'll tell you something else. It's not the aircraft carrier that will kill you. It's the destroyer.
Anyway, the 300-foot wide, 2,000-foot long mid-Atlantic runways would have contained giant refrigerators to keep the ice ship cool. Holes in a picrete ship could be repaired by using seawater. And the icy aircraft carriers were also designed to be able to immobilize enemy warships by spraying them with supercooled water.
Yes.
Was it the idea of Professor Pat Pending from the Wacky Races?
Anyway, during World War II, plans really were drawn up for a huge aircraft carrier made from picrete. Now, as we're in the Christmas spirit, let's have a little sing-song. What's everybody's favourite bit in that traditional song, The 12 Days of Christmas? Which is your favourite bit?
Lord's leaping.
For me, it's the gold ring.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
Yeah.
5 gold rings.
Wouldn't that be wrong if you're asked what his favourite...
He's leading the witness.
I asked what his...
Five
No, I asked what his favourite bit was in the traditional English song, and it's not traditional, it's a recent addition. There's a man called Austin who wrote that arrangement in which it went 5 gold rings, and that bit alone is copyright and belongs to Novello, and you pay for.
All right, so you've just blown the BBC's
you've
budget.
The whole
Right.
BBC. It's a bit like Happy Birthday to
Yes.
You. You can't sing or whatever in films, or at least if you do, you have to pay enormous royalties because the lyrics are still not in public domain.
I was told at school that it was code. It was supposed to be an aide-memoire to something. I don't know what.
Well, there are these games you can play that are like, in my trunk I'm going to pack, and the first person says a pair of swimming trunks, and the second one has a pair of swimming trunks and a book. So it's that thing, it's a memory thing. There's a version I play called Christopher Biggins Has Up His Bottom Tonight, and you have to... remember the person. You go, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, and you go, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the next person says, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it has to begin with the last letter of Schwarzenegger. And...
Rodney Bewes.
Rodney Bewes, exactly. Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rodney Bewes, and then the next person goes, Christopher Biggins has his bottom tonight...
Steve Davis, the snooker player.
Brilliant! And you go on until you can't remember, and you get a huge
Simon
list.
Sharma.
You usually find that Christopher...
Anthony Andrews.
Christopher is astoundingly accommodating. That's the great thing about the game. And it goes on. It's a fun party game. I can't recommend it.
Is this why he was made King of the Jungle? With this particular skill?
Well, the fact is, the song 12 Days of Christmas is a traditional, non-copyright song, with the exception of 5 Gold Rings, which was added by Frederick Austin and is owned by Novello and Company Limited. And with that, we lash out of the frying pan of knowledge only to descend into the fearsome inferno of the fire and brimstone that we call general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What happens when you blow out the candles on your birthday cake?
You're fired.
First time he's had
You make a wish.
Well, yeah.
Ha, gotcha.
You edge a little closer to the grave, because wasn't it Richard Burton who said that when a baby cries, its first cry as it is born, just crying out knowing... Shut up. You wouldn't know a good impression if it sat on your face. So the baby, when he cries upon birth, is crying full in knowledge. I can't remember the rest of it, but something like that.
Anyway, yes, no, obviously people make wishes and things like that, but why does the flame extinguish when you blow it out?
You blow the flame off the wick and it's then disconnected and harmless in the air. And it goes out.
It's like an Indian smoke signal.
Yeah, there are 3 things that keep it alight. Right, one,
Oxygen heat,
is one.
Oxygen heat.
Heat is the other.
Wick.
And the fuel that needs to get... So you simply remove it from the heat, but if you had a wick made of something that burnt at a very low temperature, then no matter how much you blew it out, it wouldn't go out, which explains those silly trick candles.
But how come if you used bellows on a fire, that's to encourage the flame, isn't it?
Blowing into a fire is lovely because you get it, up it comes. I wonder what Richard Burton would make of it. Oh, look at the fire, growing taller and... All right, never mind.
You come from the same... You from...
I'm from the same town as Richard Burton and Anthony Hopkins.
And Michael Sheen,
and Michael Sheen, of course.
Actor,
Brilliant. In fact, my father grew up in the same street, literally the same street as Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah. In England, we live in houses. Sorry. Anyway, fire needs 3 things to work: heat, fuel, and oxygen. When you blow... Oh dear. Oh, has the fire gone out between us, darling? Has it? Oh no. Oh! Oh, you want to?
What does this mean?
Involves Christopher Biggins, doesn't it?
So, fire needs 3 things to work. It needs heat, fuel, and oxygen. When you blow out a candle, it's a sudden drop in temperature, and that's what causes the flame to go out. From heat back to cold. You know how sometimes it can be too cold to snow? Yeah?
Is that a question?
Yeah. You know how it can be too cold to snow?
Yes, because you need some moisture.
Thank you. Thank you.
You really hate me, don't you?
No, not you. No, the fact is it can't be too cold. It's a thing people say, it's too
That's really
cold.
horrible of you. You led me into it.
Hang on, he tried to get us
were you?
first.
Yes,
He didn't move.
I've been on this programme a few times, and I know whatever you say at this point, it's always, that's going to happen. Anything you think you know...
Normally you're told to talk on these programmes, with this you just have to sit there.
You said it. You said it too slow. And my little head, I went, God, I wouldn't have thought so, but yes. And I went, well, I'm going to join in then, yes.
Anyway, now the fact is, snow's been recorded at -41, -50 degrees. There's only one temperature which is too cold to snow, but then it's too cold to do anything. Nothing moves.
Absolute zero.
Absolute zero.
My favourite temperature, before we get that low, is -40. Because in centigrade and Fahrenheit, they're the same.
meet.
They're both -40.
What a thrill.
So
Isn't that exciting?
What I do want to do is I want to give a couple of points to Rob, because he is right that it's less likely to snow when there is less moisture, and there is less moisture when it is very cold. So, but it's not ever too cold to snow.
Talk to the face, because the hand ain't listening.
Oh dear. Anyway, nowhere on Earth can ever be too cold for snow. For instance, regularly snows at the poles where it's colder than anywhere else on Earth. So now we come to the great moment of truth, when our panellists are rewarded for having been good or possibly not having been good this QI Christmas. And what do we see before us? Well, Santa's favourite little helper this year, on 8 points, is Clive Anderson.
Oh. We do help by you, and I think it's a team game. It was a team
And in second place, deserving of so much support, because he's just really improving every year, on -6, Alan Davis. And third, despite falling into a few honey traps, on -8, Rob Brydon.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm sorry to say that the cold Brussels sprout on this occasion, with -16, because he's trusting and confiding and a jolly good fellow, Dom on -16. So, all that remains is for me to thank Clive, Rob, Dom and Alan, and relate you a Christmas scene in a galaxy far, far away, where Darth Vader says to Luke, "Luke, I know what you're getting for Christmas." Whatever noise he makes. He says, "No, you can't possibly know. I know what you're getting for Christmas." "You can't know. It's not true." "I know what you're getting for Christmas." "How can you know?" "I have felt your presence." Thank you very much.
QI returns to BBC One with a new series starting Friday, the 9th of January. They look like the perfect couple, but Gavin and Stacey are leading separate lives ahead of their Christmas Eve special. The first of 2 episodes tonight of the award-winning comedy is next on BBC One.